Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a deep breath, you could say, and cracking open a framework that promises something pretty revolutionary: stress-free productivity.
Hmm.
We're diving into David Allen's Ready for Anything, 52 productivity principles for work and life. And our mission really isn't just to summarize these ideas, but to pull out the core insights that allow you, the listener, to manage information overload and, achieve maximum impact with minimal internal friction.
Yeah, it sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? That phrase, stress-free productivity, it really sets this book apart from your typical time management stuff.
Right.
Alan's quite clear. The goal here isn't just raw efficiency. It's about finding a way, a method, for achieving a sustainable flow in your day-to-day. And crucially, that unlocks more of your own intuition and creativity. It's about getting to a more relaxed, positive, and therefore a more sustainable way to live and work.
I really like that framing. It's not just a checklist. It's more of a lifestyle tweak aimed at creating, well, mental space. The source material lays this whole approach out around four fundamental areas of productive behavior. This is kind of the foundation we need to grasp before we get into the tactics, right, Mark?
Absolutely. Think of them as the four legs supporting the whole thing. First, you've got to master capturing and sort of corralling all those internal and external open loops.
Yeah.
Anything nagging at you needs a place outside your head.
Okay. Capture. Got it.
Second, you have to consciously manage your focus. Understand where your actions actually fit into the bigger picture.
Makes sense.
Third, you need reliable external structures, trusted lists, tools, and you have to use them consistently, creating those trusted places.
Right. Consistent use is key.
And finally, number four, grounding it all with flexible forward motion, always knowing the very next physical action required to move something forward.
And the reason we need all this structure, which, Alan really emphasizes again and again, it boils down to stress, doesn't it? The stress we feel often isn't from doing too much, he argues, but from all those, unkept agreements we've made with ourselves.
Exactly that. Stress is basically proportional to those unfulfilled commitments, especially the ones just hanging around, taking a precious cognitive space. Alan has that great term for it.
Yeah. The psychic RAM.
That's the one, your psychic RAM.
Okay, let's dig into that psychic RAM idea, because I think this is maybe the single most important concept for anyone listening who just feels constantly swamped.
It really is foundational.
The idea being our brain is brilliant at processing, but just awful as a filing cabinet, right? So if
Yeah.
you have 10 things rattling around in there, buy milk, call mom, review that contract, they're chewing up mental energy, whether you're actively working on them or not.
They absolutely are. And that load, that cognitive load, it creates decision fatigue, anxiety. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And this is where what Alan calls the clarity paradox comes into play. It explains why just getting organized usually fails for people. Well, people try to organize these vague commitments. Things like sort out the garage or deal with finances.
Which aren't really actions you can do. They're projects, outcomes.
Precisely. The clarity paradox says,
Yeah.
you can only feel good about what you're not doing when you know exactly what you're not doing.
Okay.
And you can't know what you're not doing until you've clarified the specific, concrete next action. Until you decide that the first step for the garage is, say, search online for local organizers, that whole garage project stays lodged in your psychic RAM, demanding attention.
Ah, I see. So it's about getting hyper-specific on the very next step.
Exactly. That moves you from being just reactive, bouncing from email to crisis to being truly responsive.
It's been observed, hasn't it, that even just holding two unresolved things in your head, that alone creates stress because they're competing.
They absolutely do. Two commitments conflict for your limited mental bandwidth. Being subliminally aware of all those open loops creates this constant low-grade hum of frustration and anxiety.
Yeah, that hum. I know that feeling.
The alternative is developing responsibility, learning to process, clear, and handle anything that comes your way appropriately. Once you decide the next action, and crucially write it down in a system you trust, your brain can let go of the worry, and you can actually start executing.
Which brings us right back to the power of capture. Because if those open loops stay in your memory, they mess up your ability to prioritize effectively.
Totally. Priorities only really function at that conscious, thoughtful level. If your RAM is full of nagging reminders, you can't even get to that clear state.
So maintaining that complete inventory of all open loops, getting it all out, that's non-negotiable.
It's the prerequisite. You have to have an absolute, complete, and renewable inventory. If your mind doesn't trust your external system to hold every little detail, it will simply never let go of the mental load. It can't.
Okay, that makes sense for clearing the decks.
Right.
But here's a thought, maybe a pushback. If I capture everything, and maybe I end up with 50 or even 100 items, which, let's face it, many overwhelmed people easily could, isn't thinking about all of them, even just to process them, isn't that more exhausting initially than just letting them float around vaguely? Doesn't that sheer volume create more stress up front?
That's a really, really good question because it gets right to the heart of what Alan calls the thinking paradox.
Okay.
And the answer is a bit counterintuitive. The paradox essentially says you have to think about your stuff more than you think you should.
Right.
But you don't have to think about it as much as you're probably afraid you might need to.
Okay, that sounds a little like a Zen koan. Unpack that for us.
It does sound a bit like that, but there's a very practical reason. Once you capture and clarify everything, meaning you figure out the very next physical action for every single item, your brain actually trusts the system and can relax. It breathes easier. Why? Because that clarification, that detailed thinking for each item, it often takes just, say, 15 seconds, maybe 30.
Oh, okay. Not hours per item.
No. But here's the catch. You have to do that 15 seconds of thinking for everything on the list. Once that specific granular thinking is done for an item, and it's recorded in your trusted system, the brain lets go. It knows the next move is sorted and waiting.
Got it. So the stress wasn't from the sheer number of thoughts, but the vagueness of them, the lack of defined action.
Exactly. It's the undefined nature of the commitments that causes the strain.
Right.
And making that shift, getting clear, is the core of what Alan talks about with gaining perspective.
Right. It's not just about working harder. Sometimes it requires a fundamental shift in vision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perspective, Alan flat out says, is maybe the most valuable commodity on the planet. Just putting things into a different context can unlock solutions that seemed impossible before.
How so?
Well, if you shift the image in your mind, say, moving from the overwhelming, I need to reorganize my entire life, to the concrete, I need to make these 5 specific phone calls today.
Okay.
Different things just automatically start happening. Your focus narrows, action becomes possible.
And if the brain is freed up and focused, we need to ensure it's focused on, well, defined targets. We can't get lost in what Alan calls the scary swampland between thinking and doing.
That's such a great image, isn't it? The swampland. It's that murky gap between having a good idea or a goal and actually defining the action needed to make it happen.
Yeah.
Alan's pretty blunt here. You can't win a game you haven't defined. And projects, which he defines very simply, is anything requiring more than one action step.
Right. Anything multi-step.
They must be broken down.
Yeah.
If you haven't defined the very next physical action, you're not really doing the project. You're probably just doing things about the project, shuffling papers, worrying, feeling guilty.
Been there. And this is so important for you listening because those vague, scary goals, they just siphon energy away from the tasks you could actually finish soon.
That's the mechanism. Drives that long-term procrastination. You avoid the big, important projects because you haven't actually nailed down the specific physical action required to just get started or move them forward one step.
If you feel like you don't have time to start something big.
It probably means you haven't truly defined the project into its constituent actions yet. You've just got this big, amorphous outcome staring at you.
Yeah.
We need structures that help us bridge that gap, that move us from thought to action reliably.
Okay, perfect transition. Let's talk about that structure. The practical, repeatable framework for actually processing all this stuff we've captured. Alan insists, doesn't he, that the system has to be better than your mind for your mind to let go?
That's the benchmark. Your mind won't delegate remembrance duty unless it truly trusts the external system. And this is where the 5 phases of workflow mastery or horizontal control come in. This is the engine of the whole thing, the repeatable sequence from maximum efficiency and, crucially, minimum leakage.
All right, let's run through them. Phase 1, collect.
Yep. Get everything loose, papers, emails, ideas scribbled on napkins, thoughts, receipts, you name it, into what he calls leak-proof external buckets. In trays, notebooks, apps.
Leak-proof is the key word there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to empty these collectors regularly. Otherwise, they just become another source of stress, another pile of unprocessed stuff.
Okay, makes sense. Phase 2 is process. This is the clarification step, right?
Exactly. You pick up one item at a time from your collection bucket and ask, what is it? Is it actionable? If it's not actionable, you've got 3 simple choices.
Yeah.
Trash it, file away as reference material, or tickle it. Put it on a list for later review. Incubate it.
Trash, file, or tickle.
Got it. And if it is actionable,
Then the golden question. What's the very next physical action? And here's that crucial little rule. If that action takes less than 2 minutes,
Do it now.
do it right then and there. Sending that quick reply, making that brief call to schedule something. Don't waste mental energy adding something tiny to a list when you could just dispatch it immediately.
Love that rule.
Yeah.
Okay, phase 3, organize. This is putting things where they belong. Precisely. The output of phase 2 needs a home. Your next actions get sorted onto lists based on the context needed to do them, like at calls, at errands, at computer. Things that must happen on a specific day or time go straight onto your calendar.
Calendar for hard deadlines, context lists for flexible action.
Exactly. And anything that requires more than one action step gets logged on your projects list. That list is just a tracker, a reminder of the outcomes you're committed to finishing.
Okay. Collect, process, organize. Seems straightforward enough. What's phase 4?
Phase 4. This, Alan argues, is the absolute keystone holding the entire structure together. Review.
The weekly review.
The mandatory, comprehensive weekly review. This is your time to clean up loose ends, update your lists, look ahead, maintain the system, and basically get current and clear.
Why mandatory, though? For someone really busy, that weekly review feels like the first thing that gets jettisoned when things get crazy.
I know it feels that way, but it's mandatory
Yeah.
because without it, this system immediately starts to lose its integrity.
Yeah.
Your mind stops trusting it. Ellen puts it starkly. System effectiveness is inversely proportional to awareness. If you skip the review, you stop being aware of everything your system holds. You stop trusting that all your commitments are captured and your next actions are current and relevant.
And then your brain tries to take back control.
Instantly, it starts thinking, wait, did I remember to add that client follow-up? What about that deadline next week? And boom, your stress levels spike again. The weekly review is how you maintain trust. It's about getting current, getting clean, and also, importantly, getting creative by looking at your projects from a slightly higher altitude.
Okay, that sells it. The review is non-negotiable for trust. And finally, phase 5, do.
Yep. This is where the rubber meets the road, making choices about what action to take right now based on 4 criteria.
Yeah.
Context, where are you? What tools do you have? Time available, energy level, and priority.
Context, time, energy, priority. Makes sense.
And to make that do phase really effective, especially the priority part, we need to loop back to that focus conversation we had earlier. We need to consult Alan's horizons of focus.
Right, those different altitudes.
Exactly. This framework helps ensure we're working on the right things, not just the urgent things. It gives you multiple levels of perspective. The runway, that's your current next actions. Then 10,000 feet, current projects. 20,000 feet, your areas of responsibility and focus, like health or staff development. All the way to 50,000 plus feet, your life purpose, vision, core values.
So if I'm feeling stressed down here on the runway, grappling with some annoying task during my do phase, I can consciously zoom out, maybe to the 20,000-foot level, look at my key responsibilities and realize, okay, this one difficult email, while annoying, isn't actually threatening my core job function or my health goals. It gives you that bigger picture, that clarity from a higher place.
That's precisely the power of it. It lets you constantly check if your actions down here on the runway are actually aligned with and serving your bigger commitments and goals up at 20,000, 30,000 feet or higher. It keeps you oriented.
So wrapping this all together, what does this mean for you, the listener, practically? Applying these principles, this whole system, it ultimately leads to what Alan calls the freedom-productivity equation.
Yeah, I love this one. Your power, your effectiveness is actually proportional to your ability to relax.
Seems paradoxical again.
It does, but think about it.
Yeah.
When you have truly trusted systems, managing all your commitments, all those agreements with yourself and others, your mind is no longer constantly busy just remembering things.
It's freed up.
It's freed up. It can relax. And when it relaxes, it can engage at a much higher level, more creative, more intuitive, better problem solving. It's an incredible return on the investment of setting up the system.
So it really boils down to consistency in the small, defined things. Small actions done consistently create major impact over time.
Absolutely. Knowledge workers today, maybe more than ever, must develop this skill set for knowledge work, which means relentless self-management, that constant self-correction loop, and always defining those crucial next actions. It's about building these subtle, pervasive, positive habits.
A system of positive habits.
And that consistency, that habit loop, it guarantees continuous improvement. Which brings us, actually, as we close this deep dive, to a really provocative final thought from Alan, something that kind of encapsulates the whole philosophy of being ready for anything.
What's that?
He suggests that the biggest successes often come directly from the most failures.
Okay, interesting. Failure is a prerequisite for success.
Yeah. So the question for you, the listener, to maybe mull over is this.
Yeah.
What small game, maybe a system you tried, a habit you attempted, a process at work, what game have you learned to play better recently that was built directly on the lessons from a previous failure or stumble?
Mm.
Recognizing that cycle, actively using that self-correction loop where failure informs improvement, that perhaps is the ultimate key to truly being ready for anything in this complex, fast-moving world we all navigate.